The left is in desperate need of their own Donald Trump. Donald Trump's seizure of power is so effective and so uncompromising that he will get his agenda or he won't get anything. And he will not settle for less than what he is absolutely pursuing. He doesn't create a milquetoast version of his vision that placates his base. He pursues what it is that he wants. And he's so committed to his agenda and so of the belief that only he can do it, that if he doesn't win, he tries again. When Trump enters office, he enters with total control of Congress. He'll usually lose it after the first midterm, but he has 2 years of unchecked power before that happens. He enters with a significant majority that controls for a few Republicans disagreeing with his agenda. Meanwhile, the Democrats have a very, very tight control over the Senate with a tiebreaker majority. Trump works to create systems that uphold his agenda so that even when he's out of office and the opposing party controls the White House, Senate, and the House, his agenda can still make gains. We saw Roe v. Wade become overturned under complete Democratic control. Imagine if we had a leftist who was able to determine that much of the Supreme Court, a leftist who was completely willing to write as many executive orders in one term as he did, a leftist who does not worry so much about decorum, about precedent, about right or wrong in terms of pursuing their goal, but just gets it done. If Trump wants it, he will find a way. He'll appoint the right people, fire the right people. Whatever it is, he's going to get the agenda he wants. He doesn't quit. And when he's ousted, he'll find his way back in power to continue that agenda. We need somebody who has that kind of fighting spirit for the left. Imagine if there was a leftist who went that hard on Medicare for all, the same way Trump does for his border wall. If we had a leftist that went that hard for raising minimum wage, the same way Trump does for getting abortion outlawed. Imagine if we had a president who went as hard on ending foreign wars as we do on a president who wants to deport millions of people. Imagine if we had a president who said, if the Democrats don't get in line with this agenda, then the Democrats will lose. If a president had the old guard of Democrats ousted, primaried, delegitimized by their base for disagreeing with them. Republicans cannot disagree with Donald Trump. Trump gutted the Republican Party because of a series of losses. The Republicans were on life support because Obama kept beating them. So Trump comes along and says, you guys have been doing everything wrong. It's my way or the highway. Everyone fell in line, and even the never Trump Republicans weren't able to keep that up for very long. Trump defines what the Republican Party's agenda is completely. All the Republican senators have to follow what Trump wants, or the Republicans won't view them as legitimate. Now imagine we had that same kind of voter control on the left. The Democratic Party is completely controlled by special interest groups and money. And I'm not saying Republicans don't also have that, but Republicans fear disappointing their base. If you notice, Republicans never lecture their voters on what to care about. They never shame their voters into voting. They just do what their voters want, represent their voters' interests and concerns, reach out to them, and essentially act as representatives for them. Democrats, on the other hand, treat their voters like servants. You have to support my regime. You're a peasant, and you work for me. I'm your master. I'm your God. There is no Republican telling you, I'm your God, I'm your master, you have to care about this issue. Republicans meet the voters where they're at, maybe convince them that they care about certain issues like immigration, immigrants are ruining your life, abortions, murder, this country needs to be bombed. They'll tell the voters what to think a lot of the time, or the voters have their opinions and beliefs, and the Republicans will meet them there. So there's more rhetoric, more propaganda versus Democrats try to utilize shame and this moral obligation. You have to defend illegal immigrants because it's inhumane not to. You have to defend the right to abortion because it's a civil liberty. But instead of focusing on coherent messaging like that, they would rather focus on shame, saying essentially that you're a bad person if you don't defend these civil liberties, if you don't defend against human rights violations. Well, then at the same time, purporting those same human rights violations, continuing bombing overseas, continuing deportations, or not doing enough to defend certain liberties like codifying Roe v. Wade into law so that Republicans can't just take it away at a later date. Democrats are not as relentless in their pursuit of their agenda as Republicans are. Democratic voters don't have a strongman that essentially says, this is the new agenda, like it or you're out. Trump basically whipped those Republicans in line to say, this is what the party's about now. You guys lost too many times. You're not worthy of being in control. Trumpism defines the party now, and that's it. Closest we ever got to a Trump on the left was Bernie Sanders. And had he gone all the way, I think things would have gone in the perfect direction we needed to go in order to get the Democratic Party to be a legitimate opposition to the Republican Party. When Bernie was running, you noticed all those little Democrats on the stage all wanted to seem like the Medicare for All guy. And the people who weren't were losing. People who oppose Trump's agenda, they don't typically make it through their primaries. And at this point, there's not really anti-Trump Republicans that are legitimate, serious threats. There's some voices. They're basically grifters. Nobody listens to them on the Republican side. But Democrats were scared to criticize Bernie too much during the primaries because they saw the direction the party was heading, and they were scared they were going to be left in the dustbin of history. They didn't want to be the Democrats who stood in the way of Bernie, because when Bernie took power, now it was Bernie-crats or old school Democrats. Bernie would have gutted the Democratic Party and redefined what it meant. The squad wouldn't have been 4, 6, whatever congressmen. It would have been more than that and growing, and eventually a party-wide stance where Bernie's agenda is the policy. When Trump leaves office, there is no shortage of Republicans who are like Trump, because Trump laid the groundwork for his agenda to be the backbone of the party. And had Bernie won, I believe very strongly that the party would have gone the same way, but for the left. It was getting scary for establishment Democrats to oppose Bernie. And in 2020, Bernie was on his way towards creating the leftist answer to Trump. And the Democratic establishment was ready to give up hope until they saw one tiny glimmer of hope, which was Biden winning South Carolina. The old guard had one last-ditch attempt to stop Bernie's momentum, and it worked. They all dropped out right before Super Tuesday. Biden washes Bernie. Bernie drops out. And now they have a perfect old school Democrat in office who's not going to gut the agenda, who's going to keep the old politics going. And now it's his shot to beat Trump. And so they do. They beat Trump. And lo and behold, no lessons learned. We almost accidentally learned a lesson from 2016, but 2020 taught us the wrong lesson. And ultimately, it was a fluke because of coronavirus. Everyone wanted to go outside. Trump did not handle that well. It was just scandal after scandal, and he lost. Democrats finally assume power. They don't assume it with the sweeping wave of support and excitement that Trump is able to garner. They don't create groundwork or policy agendas that long last their actual control. Because as you remember, people are always saying, Trump determined the Supreme Court, which is going to have lasting effects for generations. What have Democrats done or leftists done that is going to have lasting effects for generations or decades for the leftist agenda? So Biden doesn't really do anything to create solid progressive framework in the country. The economy is bad, and all we get is lectures and shame and nothing to actually excite us. They snuff us out of a primary, they don't listen to our voices, and we lose again. Now, this loss in 2024 was a buffer, in my opinion. We should have faced this loss in 2020, but enough of the right things happened to let Biden win. And there's a lot of debates on why Biden won, when the things that made Kamala lose are things Biden is also guilty of. But if we actually laid the groundwork for a leftist Trump, redefined what it meant to be a Democrat. This leftist Trump ended the career of Democrats who stood in his way, did whatever he could to get his policy done, and had lasting leftist effects for generations, then we could have an excited base that felt represented, would go out and vote, not just for the president, but for Congress, and we'd be able to push our agenda more. Let me give you an example of something a leftist Trump might do. Leftists are upset at Trump picking 3 of the Supreme Court justices, and he's on his way to potentially pick 2 more, depending on how things go. When Obama had the chance to fill a Supreme Court spot, when a Supreme Court justice died almost a year before Obama's last administration, Republicans did everything they could to prevent him from filling that seat, and then moved very quickly once Trump was in power. A leftist Democrat, a leftist Trump, would do the same. They would do everything they could to prevent Trump from filling those seats. He already did. There's also a limit to what you can do in terms of stopping a Supreme Court nominee. But a leftist Trump might do something like packing the Supreme Court. A Democrat might say something like, well, if we pack the Supreme Court, then Republicans can pack it even further, and it continues to polarize the Supreme Court. A leftist Trump might do something like pack the Supreme Court, put some sort of limit after packing it to stop it from being packed further. He would just go for it. He wouldn't be concerned about precedent. How was this done before? Or impact. What ramifications is this going to have for our electorate or legislator, our constitution? He's just going to go for it. Imagine we had that same kind of power on the left. Someone who takes the people who oppose the agenda, ruins their career, calls them out. Someone who gets into power and steamrolls opposition. Medicare for all is a good idea. It is. It is just flat out a good idea. We are the only developed nation in the world without some sort of universal healthcare system. Now imagine we achieve that in America, but the way we do it is a little unorthodox. Let's say we do it in a way that's not typically done. Let's say they use executive authority to push their agenda of Medicare for all, and it works. Even if it's not the most stable thing, would you be upset that they did it in a more dictator fashion, or would you just be happy your agenda got passed? If we don't stop worrying about the way we do things and instead worry about the results and start playing the game the way Trump is, if we don't start, we're never going to win. Trump changed the game. The game is now Trump's rules. He did not just change the game for the Republican side. He changed the game for the Democrat side. And the sooner Democrats realize that, we're already very late on this, by the way, because Trump started this in 2015 and it is now 2024. We're still dealing with his bullshit, and we're not going to be done with Trump until 2029. And we had a small break where normal was brought back again, and all that did was create Trump 2.0. There needs to be a leftist Trump with a leftist Project 2025 who comes back with a vengeance to get the leftist agenda, who comes in, every single Democrat falls in line, every single Democrat supports this person, a 500-page plan of how they're going to assume power and make sure the leftist agenda happens no matter what and stays in place. We need that kind of threat from the left. I thought it was going to be Bernie. The current short list of Democrats is horseshit. There's not a single good name on that list that I've seen floating around. In this election, age was a big number. Biden dropped out due to his age, although his mental state really was the issue because Trump is old too, and the arbitrary number difference in their age doesn't really matter. They're both old as hell. So why is it okay for Trump to be old and run, but it's not okay for someone on the left to be old and run? And it's because Trump doesn't say, I already lost, I'm not going to run again. I'm old, I'm not going to run again. That's stuff on the left. That's stuff the Democrats say. Trumpism says, I lost, it was rigged, I'm going to go again. I'm old, but I'm still sound, so I'm going to run. If we had a Trump on the left, he would say, in Bernie's case, 2016 was rigged. 2020 was rigged. 2024 was rigged by not having a primary intentionally. They could have had Biden drop out sooner and had a genuine primary. All 3 elections since Trump was introduced to the game were rigged. I don't care. I was cheated out of the nomination. I should have it. I'm old, but I'm still sound enough to be a senator, and if I'm sound enough to be a senator, I can be the president. A leftist Trump would run anyways. Assuming Bernie is still kicking it in 2028, I honestly do not care if he runs again. He will be super old, probably die in office. I'm sure he'll pick a solid vice president, but the Bernie impact has to happen. And either he needs a solid successor to his movement. We need someone who's a leftist Trump, or Bernie should run again. Because honestly, I would rather have Bernie go in there, a corpse, and die in office than have one of these Democrat schmucks run again and either lose to the next Trump, the heir to Trumpism, or win and just be another do-nothing, lousy corporate Democrat. So honestly, I don't care about Bernie's age. We need a leftist Trump. It has to be Bernie or someone else. I can't think of who else it's going to be. Maybe someone will come out and surprise me. Maybe Bernie won't run in 2028, but he'll push this thing that he did after the election where he's saying Democrats lost because they gave up the working class. More Democrats will come forward and say, hey, you know, Bernie's right. Maybe I should push myself more to the left. AOC will be old enough to run by then. I'm not a big fan of that one personally. I don't know if she has the juice to run that movement, but I think she would not be the worst president. I mean, she's already going a little too establishment so early on in her career, but definitely better than Biden, definitely better than Kamala. And I think if she had that platform, she might use it to move herself more to the left. But either way, Bernie has the track record. He has the juice. He has the movement. He just has to be a fighter the way Trump is. And I get it. Father time comes for all of us. But like I said, I don't really give a shit that Bernie is old, but he does, and a lot of other people do. So we'll see what happens. But either way, whoever runs in the Democrat side in 2028 cannot be another boring Democrat robot like Biden and Kamala. We need our Trump. We have to find this person, rally behind them, and this person has to be unwavering in their pursuit of power, because evil will always pursue power by any means necessary, and we on the left have to do the same. So that's my rant. That's my thoughts. We need our leftist Trump. I hope somebody good comes out of 2028, because the people that we're suggesting now suck, and I'm not excited about them winning, because this video is not intended to be a playbook on how Democrats can win more, because that's not my goal. My goal isn't to make Democrats win more. My goal is to have better Democrats who create policy that outlasts Democrats, because in the event Democrats lose, we can never guarantee Democrats won't lose. If they do lose, we need what they did with power to be so ironclad that it's not easily just brushed away by Republicans, and our rights and freedoms and benefits are secured. So that's all. Those are my thoughts. Please subscribe to this channel for more political coverage, analysis, current events, perspective, rants, content. This has been Cynicism, and I will see you guys around.